Welcome everyone to today's AI webinar. My name is Sander Schmid and I'm your host today and a partner at LP running the AI practice. Today we are gathered to unknot the fascinating world of language models, so-called LLMs, and their role in the ever-evolving landscape of AI or artificial intelligence. We will explore the intriguing topic of human-computer interaction. How is it that we can communicate so effectively with machines that inherently lack consciousness? Although empty of soul, these sophisticated machines exhibit distinct styles and preferences in their communication. It's as if they possess a unique digital personality, enabling them to engage in a meaningful dialogue, respond thoughtfully, and even react in a manner that mimics human interactions. This phenomenon raises compelling questions about the nature of intelligence, the future of technology, and the boundaries between human and machine. Throughout our webinar, we will explore the underlying technology that makes this possible. We will also discuss the implications of these advancements, highlighting both the opportunities and the considerations that come with them. Moreover, we will provide insights into the latest development process of these models, freshly from the US, including the challenges faced and the breakthroughs achieved. Our expert speaker, Oren, he just wrote me that he don't have permission to join the event at this stage, so please, Marcus, take over and approach him. So our speaker, Oren, will share his perspective on what the future holds for LLMs and how they might further blur the lines between human and artificial intelligence. And we will get some latest insights from academia, from ETH, and ETH how it positions the AI Center by Mattea, and also some leading research content on this topic from Rui Cheng. I'm very happy to welcome all of you to today's event, and thank you for having made the efforts to participate. A special thanks to Oren, since he's New York based and therefore a very early bird today. So sit back, relax, and prepare to embark a fascinating journey into the heart of AI. And please note that we have a Q&A at the end of all speeches, at the end of all of the speeches. But you have a Q&A chat window where you can ask questions throughout the presentations, which we then will pick up at the very end. So let me show you or talk shortly through the agenda. So we started with the opening. I'll give you a few basics about generative AI LLM. Then I'm giving over to Nourdine. He's giving you some insights how you should and can talk to these computers. What are the tricks? Because it's like if you talk to the computer, like if it's a child, you get children responses. If you ask scientific questions, you get scientific responses, etc. Then we give it over to Oren from the latest news from the US. Then, as I mentioned, the ETH AI Center, as well as some latest research content from ETH. And then we have the Q&A. All right, so let me shortly introduce you to the speakers. We have my dear colleague, partner Nourdine Abderrahmane. He's actually a transformer for many, many years, not the ones that are machines and can turn into a car, but more in the financial world. He studied IT and is therefore always very close to the transformation. And of course, now with AI, transformation is going to be presumably one of the key elements, how to turn this into value. Then we have Oren from Motive Partners, which is our, let's say, investor in LPA, or main investor, main shareholder. He is in the topic for many, many years. Comes from Cornell, actually interesting where we have the transformation, which we use in LLMs, but he also worked for Microsoft OpenAI in the research of LLM. So he had always his hands on the topic for many years, still very engaged on the topic. So I'm very glad he made the effort to join us so very early. Then we have Mateja. She's actually an entrepreneur by heart, by given, always lots, of course, connected with technology in similar areas, also in respect of AI, now working at the ETH Center of AI. And then last but not least, we have Furui Cheng, a postdoc PhD, computer science and technology at ETH. He's now at the moment researching in human AI interaction. I think a new area which I'm convinced we will hear and see a lot in the coming years. I mean, if you think of what Elon Musk at the moment is doing, it's just amazing. So I'm really looking forward for his contribution. All right, let's start with my introduction to generative AI and the basics. So let's give it just on the next slide a short overview how we could cluster it. Often seen, you have these circles, which somehow are not so compelling because the circles they give you just the next circle, but doesn't show you what else is in the bigger circle. But anyhow, it's too much to explain everything, so that's why we propose to just talk you through the line of AI into GPT. So as I guess most of you know, AI is the idea that computers can act and react like humans. We have now, meanwhile, some definitions out there which getting more and more into this direction. It can be more formal or less, but at the end, this is what we mean, meanwhile, with AI. And of course, machine learning as a subset of AI that includes algorithms that learn from data. So within machine learning, there are various approaches, including neural networks, which are designed to recognize patterns and make decisions like a human would do. Then, of course, within machine learning, we have the neural networks as the foundational component of machine learning, I would say, inspired by the biological neural networks that constitute brains. They are particularly useful in deep learning, a specialized subset again, that involves how we define the layers and then try to mimic the humans through different layers and knots to mimic our brain. Then we have the large language models, a specific type of neural networks trained on vast amounts of text data. The purpose is to understand the complexity of human languages and to generate text that mimic human-like language capabilities, capturing the subtitles of context and semantics. Clearly, NLP must be mentioned here too. So the technology to read by the computer sentences and words, bring them back into numbers and cleaning up all the things you need to clean up that a computer can read text. Then the way back again, once the model has generated the content, bringing back the different words into sentences and context. Then we have the GPTs. It's an area or a family of LLMs that use the transformer architecture to process and generate language. These models are pre-trained on a diverse range of internet text and then fine-tuned for specific tasks. And then we have the tools, the GPT tools. They include ChatGPT, which we are going to look at today. So even now with these plugins, a practical application built on GPT architecture. They showcase the applications of AI in user-facing technology, leveraging the advancement neural networks and LLMs to interact with users in natural language. So let's look at a few concrete things on the next slide. So here we see actually what has been or where GenAI is new and what can be done. So while we in AI and machine learning in the past, especially in financial service industry, typically just worked on numbers and models. Today we have totally new contents and inputs that can be brought together. So on one hand, we have pictures. Here you see a funny pictures of Mona Lisa with a little bit of a different background than I guess you used to see. We have this ability comes from Gen AI to bring together different content into different newly generated content, which is this generative AI. So it's you have you have content and then you produce new content, which is one of the important points of this generative AI. Another example is this bestseller tool, Alice and Sparkle. Got lots of discussions if this was fair to have such a book being written with AI. Even the picture has been done with AI and actually was very well written. Caused lots of conversations when this has been released. So this is this text to text. So machines read text, generate new text, and the way you would like to. Then we have also music. Meanwhile, we can generate different musics a lot. So if you like Eminem, you can use words and he sings the words, and so many others. Here you have the paparazzi from Lady Gaga as an example. And a very new feature just come out a couple of weeks, maybe even less, videos that are on beta version now with ChatGPT, where you can produce videos. Here you see only the picture, but in fact it's a video of mammoths running around in a snow area. So how does it work? This generative AI, I can show you on the next slide. So it always starts with data collection. Obviously, in that field, it's just substantial data, and it is massive. We'll see a little bit more later on how enormous these data volumes meanwhile are. And then we have a training session, then we have a generation, and then a refinement. These are the four main steps. So the training is how we teach the AI model to read all these newspapers, the books, the internet, the images, the speech, the pictures, all that. Then we have the model that generates the content. So it's learning from all the inputs what it should do with it. And then typically you have also a phase where you refine the output, so you optimize the model for better results. Below you can see another way of seeing it again, different inputs from books all the way to excuse me, structured data and signals. We train, we have a core model, we have an adoption with different use cases from questions, answers to sentiments, information extraction, etc. So this is generative AI, a new field that's just accessible for a few, or was not accessible for most of us in last years, but now everyone can have access. Maybe a little bit of next slide. Some distinction between the large language models and traditional language models. So with the large language models, on one hand, it's the data, which is much bigger than with the traditional ones, which often is also a question of hardware and the costs, by the way. Also, the large language models, they have deeper context in understanding and can express themselves coherently over a longer text passage than the traditional ones. They struggle with long sequences of text and maintaining context. We see later on, for example, the number of parameters that are used in ChatGPT. That is a big difference. Also, then the large language models, how they can adapt to a wide range of tasks, while the traditional are normally specific training for just, for very a specific task that you would like to do. So if you want to build a ChatGPT, of course, you have to use a large language model. If you want to build a bot on just some specific use cases within a company that is used for a technical bot, for example, then maybe a traditional language model is sufficient. All right, then on the next page, a little bit of history. I think that's interesting. Even when I did the slide, it was interesting to see how quickly this GPT evolved in the last few years. I mean, we had 2018, we had the first one that has OpenAI done, was this paper released through Google, this transformer architecture that they used or enabled them to come up with the first GPT-1. Then not long afterwards, GPT-2 was then coming out in 2019. I had already 1.5 billion parameters. Actually, if you make your own research on the parameters, sometimes you find 15 billions or 1.5 billions. I took the more conservative one. I'm not sure which was more relevant, but they introduced also this zero-shot learning, which is pretty cool. So if you train a model, for example, on horses, you can still recognize then a zebra if it knows that zebras are striped and has not seen a zebra before in the training. So this zero-shot learning was introduced in 2019. But then already in 2020, and I see this extremely speed from OpenAI they had, where they had then 175 billion parameters. So now we are really talking about huge amounts of data and how they manage this data. Of course, by improving parameters, by improving the data and the parameters, the models get sharper and better. They also introduced then the few-shot learning in 2020 and solved, of course, lots of other problems. And then, as we all know, the 14th of March 23, ChatGPT-4 has been released with more than 7 trillion parameters, processing 25,000 words with a massive context handling capabilities. Also in 23, then the text, image, and voice has been introduced, and not in 23, but later on, a reduction on bias and safer output came, especially, I would say, late 23, beginning of 24. But this is continuously processed, at least the way I observe it. Also interesting, I guess, you know, but GPT only used 2 months for getting 100 million users. And it's just extreme. If you compare it, Instagram, it took them about 2.5 years. Uber had 5 years. Facebook had 4.5 years to getting the same number of users, 100 million. So this success of AI is just extremely. Okay, next page, please. And here maybe also something I think it's important to state at this stage. I mean, we have not just OpenAI or ChatGPT, we have many others, here a few listed. And one of the problems are clearly to keep up which ones are best, which ones are better. Will there be a better one? We, for example, don't know. Some say Gemini is better than OpenAI, others say it's less good. We have the European response Mistral. So there's lots of movements in the space with the big tech companies. At this stage, I think it's fair to say that ChatGPT 4 is still the most advanced solution to use. But anyhow, this is a moving table, so I'm pretty sure if we would come up with such a table, in 2-3 years, presumably it's going to look different. So this is the short introduction to LLM AI. I would now hand over to Nurdin, who will lead you through on the prompting side.
Thank you very much, Sandro, for these very insightful introductory words, and a very warm welcome also from my end. Very happy to have you in the call today. The objective of my part of this event is really to provide you with the basics of how you interact with a large language model, and specifically using prompting, because prompting to this day is still the most effective way of interacting with such a model. Based on the development, the speed of development that Sandro just mentioned, cannot be outruled. In a few months' time, we will start to talk to these kind of language models directly, or have even used Neuralink from Elon Musk in 2 or 3 years' time. So who knows how long this will prevail. For today, we're gonna focus on prompting, which is the written interaction between a user and a model. And for the sake of the demonstration, we're going to use ChatGPT in its version 3.5. As Sandro mentioned, there are many tools out there, many solutions out there. So this is no particular ranking or preference. This is just using the opportunity to use what I believe has established so far as the leader in the segment. And obviously, whether the prompting tricks and do's and don'ts that we're going to discuss now, whether they all apply in the same way to other solutions, we cannot guarantee. But what we can tell you is if you follow some of the basics that we're going to discuss in a second for ChatGPT, you should be fine. So with no further ado, let's dive into it. I think the first important learning when it comes to prompting with ChatGPT is that prompting is really about giving instructions to a language model, whereas, at least for myself, I'm very used to type in questions into Google search because I'm looking for a piece of information, or I'm trying to get an answer to a question that I'm wondering. And here it is really important to keep in mind that a prompt is different from a Google search where I try to find an answer to a question. A prompt is rather an instruction to the language model to produce a certain output. And in order to provide that instruction, there is a best practice to follow a certain structure of a prompt with 6 building blocks that we're going to discuss in a second. If you follow this, then the chances are very high that you get a very concrete answer back from the language model in the context, in the level of detail that you're looking for. Last but not least, similar to Google to a certain extent, the prompting also takes some sort of command, some sort of meta information you can provide to the model to instruct the outcome that you desire. So similar to Google, you can put certain parts of your answer into quotation mark, where then the language model will understand, okay, these couple of words I have to take as a single unit, and I can't interpret every single word of it. Try to find out what the user wants to find out or wants to instruct. The same is for backslashes or forward slashes that you can use to distinguish between parts of your instructions and set visual breaks. And we're going to see this as well in the coming parts. And then obviously, if you use spaces, you can improve the readability. So if you don't use spaces, chances are high the language model is not going to understand what you want from it. So let's start with how do you actually get started with ChatGPT? And here, the first surprise, at least to me, when I started using it, is that you can't just open it like a Google search and start for it, but you actually have to customize and personalize your usage of it. Why do you do that? It's to give ChatGPT a general kind of parameters about who you are, what your background is, what the role is in which you will interact with the language model, as well as how your general preferences are in terms of answers. Do you want them to be brief? Do you want them to be structured? Do you want them to be comprehensive, etc.? So how does that look in the tool? Let's have a look. Trying to get this started here. Sorry, for some reason it doesn't max up, but anyway, what you see here is when you go into the preferences, you are being asked a couple of questions from the model itself. So what's your background? What do you want the model to know about you? And here in our example, we're entering that we're a person based in Germany. We're working for a specific company, and we want the model to be precise and not use hallucinations, which I'm going to explain to you later on what that means. So here you're really setting the scene for the language model to understand what your general preference is. And those preferences that you set here will have an effect onto the answers that it's going, or the output that the model is going to produce to you. So that's the first major difference, or the first specific when using ChatGPT and doing your prompting. Now, the next piece, and that's really the second big takeaway I want you to take away from that session today, is that our best practice for prompting is really to provide instructions with 6 different building blocks. And these building blocks should be put down in a text that you see on the top right-hand side in that blue box. Let's go through them briefly one by one. First of all, you want the language model to understand what is the role that it shall play. And that's really, and here you're really explaining the language model, your perspective on a certain instruction. Do you want to be, do you want to take it, do you have a history question and you want to have your history essay being written from a certain perspective? This is important for the language model to understand, because then based on its know-how, it will put emphasis to certain information and context and leave aside others. Then the second thing, and that might be more intuitive when you do it with Google, but here in prompting, you should really be explicit about how what is the task that you're trying to achieve. Are you trying to write a summary? Are you trying to have a draft of an email? Are you trying to understand certain information? This you not only can tell the language model, but you even should tell the language model, because then it can understand what is the output you are looking for. Third is you should be explicit about your audience. Again, this might be intuitive when you do it yourself, when you do your research on search engines like Google or Bing, but here being as explicit about your audience also helps the language model to understand how brief can it be. So for example, in a technical context, if I want to have the model draft me an email about a technical development to a group of engineers, then the language will obviously understand that it will not have to explain the technical basics of that advancement, versus if you're telling the model, hey, I want to explain how the world functions to a first-class elementary school, then it will understand that it will have to use completely different language. The tone is also not to be underestimated, because you can tell the language model to be explicit, to be brief, to be using simple language, technical language, or even poetry language. So here again, you should instruct the model that what it is that you're using. And then you can also put highlight on essential information. So if you want a certain fact to be included, then you can tell it explicitly, include this piece of information into your answer. And then finally, what also many people probably do not do in the beginning when they use ChatGPT, you can instruct the language model to first ask you questions back. So it will not produce an answer straight away. It will you will allow the language model to ask you questions back, and then it will enter into some process of dialogue between yourself and the model before it then produces the output that you have instructed it to do. That was a lot of theory. Let's have a look at how that really turns out in the practice. So what we've prepared here is really to show you the difference of when you do a very brief entry. Let me skip back. What you see here at the top is Timo's enter to say, give me some history about the German football team. And you see a rather long answer coming back from the language model, which factually is all correct, but where the language model has taken a lot of liberty to interpret what you're looking for. Are you looking for an explanation? Are you looking for an email? And so on. And you also haven't given instructions as to how brief and in what structure you want it to be. Now, in contrast, and that is what you saw here, let me go back to make sure this is not missed. What you see here then is we have asked the same question, but we have provided more insight. So we've told the language model what role it has to take, so what perspective to take. We've told him what information is to be included, and so on. And then for basically the very same question, we then get a completely different answer, which from a content point of view still contains most of the same pieces of information, but is structured completely differently. And so that is why really these 6 building blocks are quite important and can drive the effect to what you are looking for and what the output is that ChatGPT can produce for you. Good. Then if we move on, what's also important to understand is that you can really interact on a certain topic with the language model. So unlike your, for example, Google search, where you search for term 1, you get a result, and then you interpret for yourself, is that result satisfactory for myself, or shall I try it differently? Here with the language model, you can really interact to say, I like your output on section 1, but please change paragraph 2 and make it shorter. And then it will take into account your reaction and produce a second iteration of it. And this is really one of the key strengths, because then you can, just like with a natural interaction where you're working on a certain text, on a certain report, and you want it to be improved and changed, the same can already be mimicked by ChatGPT today. And here again, we take an example. We're asking the model, give me 5 suggestions for investing my money. And then you get 5 answers with different ideas. Then we're asking again to improve the answer using a certain piece of information, like an index fund or an ETF in this case. And then the response is being reworked by ChatGPT, providing you with more and more concrete ideas or more concrete context. And if you like that, then you can obviously stop here, or you can go back and try to improve it. So that's about providing feedback. Then another important aspect, or another important strength of ChatGPT is really that you can give it a certain link. So you can say, take this annual report of the company A, and then you input a certain information of it, And just like this report produced me a similar report about company B. So then by providing information that you say, I want this to be mimicked, you can get ChatGPT to produce it in the same kind of way. Again, here a very quick example, and we stick to the 5 investment ideas example. We provide a specific example where we say, do it just like this one, and then we get the same result again, or we get the same result reworked and put into context of the example we provide. Good. So that's the 4 important elements of how you should use a ChatGPT. So make sure you have your preferences set before you start prompting. Keep in mind, prompting is about giving instructions and not asking questions. Follow the 6 building blocks that you need in order to give precise instructions to the model, and use the elements of interacting and providing context to improve your answer. Now, on top of that, there are a couple of mistakes you would want to avoid. And we have highlighted some of these for our session today. This is not exhaustive, but if you avoid these, then you should be fine in 80 to 90% of the cases. So number 1, and that's probably the bad news for most of the students at university that have to write essays and assignments with a certain word count, is that ChatGPT specifically does not work with an exact character count. So if you tell it to write a certain essay about whatever topic, and it shall be exactly precisely 200 words, it will produce an answer, but it will most likely be not precisely 200 words, or the text that you get is just not logically concise and comprehensive. So what you want to therefore avoid is to give it very specific mathematical counts of words. What you can do as part of the building blocks is to say, make the answer concise, or make it an email length, a typical email length type of output, or make it approximately 2 pages, and then you will get a more qualitatively a more satisfying answer. But an exact word count doesn't work, at least doesn't work yet. Let's see where the tool develops to. So here we've tried this. Looking at the time, I may want to skip forward on this one because it's obvious, and then maybe spend a little more time talking about hallucination and lies. What you might have already experienced yourself, but what is definitely one important thing to keep in mind when using ChatGPT is about the fact that when you're asking it logical questions or mathematical questions, that the answer cannot be trusted. And if you wanted to do that, you'd probably be better off doing an internet research using the search engines, or using certain plugins that I'm going to explain to you in a second. So here, just to give you an example, we have asked ChatGPT, who is the football player that has scored the highest amount of goals in international football, and then it comes back with an answer by saying that a certain Iranian football player is holding the world record. But then if you interact back and saying, give me the name of the male player and the female player, then all of a sudden it produces an answer and comes up with a female player that has scored much more goals than the male player in question. So logically, the answer is incorrect because we're asking kind of a mathematical question where the model should understand that a female player with high scores must be higher. Not that the gender matters at all, but there is an information out there that a female player has scored more goals, and therefore the answer that the male player with less goals is logically wrong. So that is one important topic to keep in mind. You can ask the model mathematical questions, and often they come out to be true, but generally you should not trust the response of a logical or mathematical question, at least if you're just using ChatGPT without any plugins. Now, the same is for certain text assignments. If you're taking, so the bad news for all the parents in this call is, if your kids are in school and they struggle with a certain text assignment from mathematics, you can't just put it into ChatGPT and get the ready answer. Here as well, ChatGPT will try to interpret the question, but will not give you the exact logical correct answer plus the path on how it got to resolve it. So that's also to keep in mind. Text assignments will not work. I'll skip the demo here and I'll fast forward to certain ChatGPT hacks. So we've covered the three most common mistakes to avoid. What we can recommend you is to have a look at all the plugins that are available for ChatGPT. What are plugins? You might know that from other software tools. These are really add-on software pieces that you install that augment or improve the actual core functionality. And there are a couple of plugins for ChatGPT out there that you may want to have a look at it. Especially Wolfram Mathematica solves that problem of the mistakes we just discussed. So you can use Wolfram to get logical text assignments resolved or mathematical questions to be answered. Also, you have certain extensions to producing other type of output other than just text. So DALL-E, for example, is very commonly used to produce images as an output to a certain prompt that you've given it to say, make me a picture of Mona Lisa in front of the Tower of Pisa, as we've seen in the introductory slides of Sandro. So this is really an idea in the concept of plugins to extend the functionality of your ChatGPT. I just saw a question popping up in the question and answer session, in the question and answer window. Yes, Sora is just another plugin for my understanding. We don't say that these are the only ones that you can see here on the slide, and there are many more. Plus, especially the pace of how new plugins are being developed is really high. So we are not trying to give you kind of a list of plugins that you should use and ignore all others. This is just to make you aware of the possibility of using plugins. Good. So here as well, just a quick demonstration of how DALL-E works. So I can prompt DALL-E to get us a picturesque landscape picture with views of Zurich, Frankfurt, and New York, the locations of our today's speakers. And then you can see DALL-E really working on it for a second and then producing us the output that we're looking for. It even gives us two alternatives that we can then interact with and see and say whether we like one or the other, or we would like to have one or the other improved, altered, what have you. Same goes for PDF upload, which is a more kind of an enhanced functionality to provide context. To provide a more advanced way of providing context to the model. So in this case, we have been asking ChatGPT to give us his thoughts on a certain annual report of a company, and we have attached the PDF of the annual report to it. We have tried in the preparation of this to get ChatGPT's thoughts on the annual report of the Cigna group from last year to see how it would have reacted. Couldn't make it work on time, but happy to provide that on occasion. But in any case, you can see how the models have become more powerful in terms of, first of all, interpreting data and then also providing more variety and more depth in the output. So here the pace of development again is really impressive. Good. With that, I have come to the end of the prompting session. In the interest of time, I would like to ask you to already use the Q&A window if you have more questions around prompting specifically, and then happy to take them up in the Q&A part at the end of the session and come back to this should we have more time left. With that, I would like to hand over to you, Oren. Oren, again, thank you for making the time this early in the morning, and a very warm welcome again. Handing over to you. Please instruct me when you want me to flip to the different pages.
Sounds good. Thank you, Nordin, Sandro, and for everyone at LPA and others for having me here. So I think, as we previously mentioned, the pace of development is really unprecedented. So any day you open the news, any day you open any kind of tech magazine, you'll see Google released a new model, OpenAI released a new model, Anthropic released a new model, a new startup raised $200 million off an AI deck. So really things that are completely unprecedented and shocking. So like Mistral, the startup that that Sandro mentioned in France, who are actually doing very good things in the European market with generative AI. When they raised money, probably, I think it was a year or two ago, they raised something like 200 million euros and they had no MVP and no product yet. And that's something we didn't see before. So the goal of kind of these few minutes is I'm going to go over the latest releases, and these are all things that probably came out in the past couple months, kind of walk you through how I think of these things when I see a new release. And the thing is that it's very important to be critical and experimental with new tools. So to be open-minded, to try them out, to see what they're good at, to see what they're not good at, to understand that maybe the reason that we think that some of these tools aren't good is because we're not interacting with them together, and they're trying to kind of they're trying to fuel some kind of paradigm shift that we're not used to. And this ties back to what Nordin was saying about the prompting, about how he's used to asking Google questions, but now suddenly with generative AI and with LLMs, you have to actually define a task that you want the LLM to execute. So it's kind of like the shift that we all have to get, that we have to get used to. So the first one I want to discuss is Google's Gemini 1.5, which was the release was announced a week or two ago. And in general, what Google's Gemini 1.5 Pro brings to the table is a 1 million token context window. So the context window means how many words can you put in the prompt when you're asking the LLM a question. Just for a reference point, so GPT-4 Turbo, so the latest release of GPT-4, is 128,000 tokens, the context window. The largest model, the largest context window before Google Gemini 1.5 Pro was Anthropic's Cloud, which had 200,000 token context window. So a 1 million token context window can really change the way we interact with language models, because the amount of information you can put into it is mind-blowing. So if this actually, and this isn't released to GA yet, so I can't give my critical opinion yet, but this is, you can process documents up to 700,000 words. 700,000 words is an entire series of like Harry Potter or something like that. And Google says they've released some initial results in their release paper that it's very good at needle in a haystack. What does needle in a haystack mean? It means if you're looking for a specific scene out of the entire Harry Potter series and the input is just the entire Harry Potter series, they say it's very good at being able to find that, which is something we haven't seen with GPT-4, with Claude. Typically, as the size of the context grows, even within the allowed window, the quality of the response deteriorates. So this is very interesting to see. Additionally, you can input video and audio into Google Gemini 1.5 Pro. So for video, you can put up to an hour and a half, so a full movie basically, into the model and ask it about specific scenes. Audio, you can put up to 11 hours of audio content. So this will also have potential, if this works the way Google says it was. It also has the potential to completely change software engineering, because you're able to input up to 30 or 50,000 lines of code. So the model, you can basically put an entire code base, and 30 to 50,000 lines of code is a substantial code base. So the model has the capability to understand and interact and change entire code bases, which is the kind of lens that was part of the issue with some of the other models, that they don't have full contextual understanding. But having this kind of wide view allows it to have that. And the architecture of Gemini 1.5 Pro is a tiny bit different. So they use a new architecture called Mixture of Experts, which is similar to some of the stuff that Sandra was talking about initially. But basically, the way you can think about it is they have a bunch of small, we'll call it small, it's still millions of parameters, LLMs, where every inference to the model, they decide which subset of all those models they want to call to solve that task. So it makes it more efficient in terms of the GPU usage. Now, if any of you guys are on Twitter, you'll notice that Google's getting a lot of feedback and backlash about their models in the past few weeks, just because of some of the meta prompts and responsible AI layers that they put on top of it. The next topic I want to cover is OpenAI Sora. So OpenAI Sora, as we've got in the chat here, is a new capability that OpenAI released a couple of weeks ago. It's again still on beta, and it's about generating new high-quality videos from text description. And the videos are actually very, very good. So I've seen a lot of different threads about identify what's AI generated and what's real or human generated. And sometimes it's very hard to tell the difference between the two. So OpenAI Sora really has the potential to significantly reduce the cost and time of advertising, marketing, prototyping, and making it easier and more accessible to create videos. So, of course, this is the first generation and it's not there yet, but you can imagine how much time and money is spent around the world generating videos, filming videos, editing videos, and this all has the potential to be completely changed. The next one is GitHub Copilot Enterprise. So GitHub Copilot, or any of the developer copilots, have been around for a while. But what's changing here is that it's improving. So now GitHub Copilot Enterprise can actually write documentation for code bases. It can write functions based on function header specifications. It can accelerate software development, testing, code efficiency, and even do AI generated code reviews. Okay, now on to the next slide. Sorry, that was long-winded for the first slide.
No.
Okay, so now for AI and entertainment. So I think this ties together to the Sora example that I gave, is that a lot of animation studios are already using AI generated content, not only in animation videos, and I think we all know about the Hollywood strike that is still ongoing and happened a few months ago, and that's because it's completely changing the way that one, scripts are written, and two, the way that films are generated. So you can imagine if you have a scene like in the movie Rome, for example, where you have 100,000 warriors running in the background. Now it's enough to have 10 warriors running, and then AI can basically duplicate that, change the faces, change the costumes that everyone's wearing, and it seems like there's 100,000 warriors charging. So it's completely changing the entertainment industry. And this, I mean, they wouldn't be striking and there wouldn't be so much noise if they didn't really understand the potential impact here. Now, one that's very important now in the US, especially as it's an election year, is AI and election integrity. So having deepfakes is one of the biggest harms and risks of AI, which is also, we're talking about all the great things of AI, but it also poses some risks, some societal risks. And if I see an article on whether it's on Twitter, on Instagram, wherever it is, or an image, it's impossible to know if it's fake or if it's real. The only way I do that as of today is, one, you read the content. Sometimes you can get a sense for it. There's a lot of startups that are coming up to try to detect if images and if text is AI generated or human generated. The accuracy of those is also a little bit questionable. And then the only thing we're left for is the source credible? So do we trust the source that released this image or this video? And this is going to have a big impact on elections in the US and around the world. And just another example is based on a 2-second audio. So if Sandro or Nordine speak for 2 seconds, I can upload that into an AI model, and I can generate a complete speech that sounds exactly like them, that no one will know it wasn't them, other than them, because they never said those words. So there's some scary things there that we just need to be aware of and be cautious of. I think AI and LLMs are going to completely change the robotics industry, and we're also kind of trying to see that, because if you think of robotics, there's kind of 2 aspects of what it takes to build a robot. The first is understanding the environment, and the second is interacting with the environment. Now, a lot of these LLMs, and especially the visual part of the LLMs, so if you see like the capabilities of uploading a photo to GPT-4, to Claude, or to any of these models, and its ability to describe what's in the photo, and both in terms of location and where it is basically perfect. So the whole understanding the environment section of robotics is, we can say it's close to solved. Now the only part that's left is interacting with the environment, the mechanics. So this actually already is yielding a lot of advancements in robotics. We saw a couple of months ago the first AI generated, the first AI robotic restaurant in LA. So there's a hamburger shop in LA there's no humans in the store. So robots are doing everything from A to Z, which is pretty incredible. OpenAI recently invested in a robotics company called Figure AI, and they're trying to create humanoid robots. So these robots are going to help with manufacturing, logistics, warehousing, and I think retail sectors as well, if I remember correctly. And finally, healthcare. So Google a few weeks ago or a few months ago released a report called Amy. So it's kind of a model they trained based on how doctors interact with patients, and based on initial results of it. So they tested it kind of on 2 fronts. One front was diagnostics, so how accurate is the diagnostics of AI? And 2 is how empathetic is the AI if it tells the doctors exactly which words to tell patients. And shockingly, the LLM was actually better at both at the diagnostic part and at the empathy part. And that's probably because doctors are running around the hospital and they're stressed and they have lack of sleep, and so they can't always be as empathetic as they want to. Whereas if you think about it, a machine doesn't get tired, it doesn't have that capacity. So if it has actually the time to think through what it wants to say in a given situation, it can do a really good job. And then improve diagnostic and drug research. So diagnostics we kind of covered, but drug research, the capabilities of these AI models to simulate various scenarios is insane. So simulation that it would take someone to do in the lab a few years, it can do in a matter of minutes or a matter of hours. So just in terms of the scale and capacity to experiment, that allows that really allows advancements in all fields. Now, the one thing I think, like if you ask me where are we going, what are the next steps, I would say agentic AI. What is agentic AI? It means when we have agents that interact with the environment. So as of now, all the examples that we gave here, which were all very good examples, are relatively simple and well-defined tasks. And that's just because where we are in terms of the state of the technology. But if you think what the next step is that we'll be able to give an AI or an LLM or whatever the new architecture that comes out is, a pretty complex task that requires multiple logical steps to solve. And the AI will be able to go and do that itself and to gather feedback from the environment along the way. Now, that's not possible with the current autoregressive architecture of the models, but we will be there and we're starting to see there. So you can give a task that is do a financial analysis of XYZ of some kind of company or some kind of process, or write a business plan. And the AI will actually be able to say, like we do as humans, okay, in order to do this kind of this abstract task that isn't well defined, we need to ask follow-up questions, we need to break it up into subtasks, and then we need to go and execute and get feedback from the environment as we go. So that's, I think, what we're building towards, but it's all very exciting, and being in the world of AI over the past 2 years has been incredible, and I'm very excited to see where this goes. And I'll hand this back to you, Nordine. Sandro, I'm not sure what's next here.
Thank you so much, Oren. In the interest of time, we'll move on, but as always, use please the Q&A box if you have specific questions for Oren, and then we'll try to handle them by the end of the session. So with that, we are giving over to our friends from ETH to give us their perspective on the current insights and developments. Mattea, very happy to hand over to you. Please let me know which slides you want me to
thank you.
present.
So firstly, thank you, Sandro, Nordine, and Oren for introducing everything so deeply. I'm going now back to the above all. And thank you for having me here and everybody who's listening. So first of all, I want to say that I'm here because LPA is one of our members from AI Center. And I would like just to quickly present you what we are and who we are. So I'm myself leading the center, the success of the center. It's covering all the 16 departments of ETH Zurich. So 16 departments are all starting to integrate AI in their work, and AI Center is covering all the fields. As you can see here, we have our own building. We just moved now, a couple of months ago, to the office in Oerlikon, where we have the upper floors from. So it's also a beautiful view if you have events here with us once you become a member. Then cooperating with three main pillars, which are the researchers and the labs. So here is a slide of the physical center. Let me see the slide. So it's around 1,000 square meters, 16 departments we are covering. We are proudly having 50% of women. We are not there yet, but 8th of March is here coming, and over 26 nationalities. Can you go please to the next slide? So this is the key. The key is the professors. 114 professors are affiliated with AI Center, ETH professors. Some are also from EPFL and from University of Zurich, or even from abroad, mainly focusing on their research on AI. 200 plus postdocs are working with us, and 1,400 PhD students who are working with us within AI Center. What we are doing here, we are covering, as I said before, three pillars. One is industry partners, like LPA is. Industry partners, members, however you call them, depending on their membership and their involvement. Also about the size of the company. We are trying to do the research with them together, events, sharing the news, similar to what Nordine or Oren was doing now. I myself am focusing now on the red teaming for the whole Switzerland with the companies. The other pillar are startups who are joining us. Currently, we have 35 startups, planning to have around 100 startups whose solutions are focused on AI till the end of the year, 24. And then we have, of course, research and fellows. And this is all under one ecosystem cooperating and trying to connect the dots. And the velocity of AI is so fast that we are also, as AI Center, growing super fast. So go next, please. This is called, of course, as you know, the expression Snowflake. Snowflake is covering all the areas that we call it impact areas that we are working on. So people inside the team inside AI Center is devoted to certain people are in certain areas experts more to go into and to have focus in together with researchers, industry, and with startups. So you can also later have slides. This is also the Snowflake is on our website. So it's manufacturing and industry, AI, science, engineering, robotics, automotive, sustainability, AI for good, human-centered AI and augmented reality, retail, etc. And probably these fields could be even growing. And we are now focusing on this couple of ones where is the most interest for the AI and the fastest growth. Just move on if we have another slide. So this is one key thing what we do is to connect. When I joined, it was these three pillars were still separated as three departments. I joined and made new strategy to have them all work together. So startups with academia with industry with startups, and all together with academia, trying to connect all the dots together and grow together through different solutions and whatever is coming out, especially sharing failures, new learnings. We have constant seminars for the members, open seminars, researchers that are opening up what is their new issues or new solutions, and of course industry coming up or with their new ideas and solutions or with the big questions. So they found a researcher or they found short data science lab, so-called. It depends, very customized with the industry partner, how we agree to cooperate once we start. And that's from my part, I think, everything. So come reach out to me for any questions regarding AI Center. It's super fast growing with startups, with industry partners, and with fellows. Just we accepted 15 new fellows, postdocs, and docs. Applied were almost 1,500. Imagine how much this is amazingly interest of growth of the AI. Proudly, I can say 3 females were far the best and wanted to be taken over from mentoring from professors and from industry to be financed by. So we are getting there also. I'm trying to stress myself to have more female in the robotics and AI and so on. And that's from my side. I would leave the word now on to one of our postdocs who is coming from EVIA lab, so Interactive Visualization and Intelligence Augmentation Lab. So Furui, please take over the microphone and present your own deep dive into your research, please. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mattia.
Yeah, thanks for the Matthias introduction, and thanks for the invitation. My name is Free. I'm a postdoc at ETH Zurich, and my research interest is about human interaction and large language model transparencies. So today I will bring our latest progress about large language model transparency and the interface design. Can I go to the next slide? Okay, great. So we have already seen how powerful large language models such as ChatGPT are. And so they are capable of generating fluent and also convincing text, but we also see that the generated text may contain some factual errors. And these factual errors are called as hallucinations. And so, for example, so if we ask models who is Rodrigo and who is my favorite football player, and the model can generate a passage of convincing introduction of this football player, but in the convincing text, there are some mistakes. So in our research, we target about how to identify and also visualize to inform users of these inaccuracies. So before we go to the next slide, I want to clarify that definitely we can directly refer to the ground truths, such as Wikipedia page, to verify these mistakes. But the question is that this gold standard knowledge source may not always exist. And also, how can we do it more efficient and automatically? So, so this motivated us to think about, so what properties of the generated text can be used to identify their accuracies. And so we noticed that actually the consistency have this property is very important. So for example, if we ask a model the same question multiple times, and if the model generates different, contradictory answers toward the same question, the model is not confident, and thus we should not trust the model. And that's the basic idea about the consistency. And in practice, so our questions and instructions are more open-ended, and what we get is not a token of phrase, but instead is a whole passage of information, something like this. So our problem is about how can we identify the semantic divergence among multiple passage level responses and to visualize the results to users. And we leverage, we use the idea of divide and conquer. So for example, we now focus on the top response. And our first step is to divide the top response into multiple individual statements. So each statement is extracted from the top response, and it represents a certain piece of information. So after we get this individual statement, we can verify these statements using other responses to say if the other responses also cover and support this statement. So how can we do that? So actually, it is a traditional natural language processing task, which is called the natural language inference or entailment inference. So we treat the target statement as a hypothesis, and we treat the response as a premise. So what we want to do is to see if the premise entails this statement, and we can using existing models to do that. And what we do is to verify all statements using our responses. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so for each statement, we will get the numbers of supporting, contradicting, and neutral responses. And it represents the model's confidence on each piece of information, and which can be used to identify the inaccuracies. And furthermore, so if the model is not confident about certain statement, we can also discover what are the possible alternatives. For example, if the model is not confident about this person's birthplace, we can using a question generation model to turn this statement into a question, and we use this question to find the corresponding answers in the responses, so that we can get a distribution of this piece of information in all responses. And this can be used to help users understand how model will respond to this specific question. And so based on this computational pipeline, we built an interface called Relic. And this Relic allows users to investigate and steer the model responses to fix all the inaccurate statements. Can you? Okay. So yeah, so users can first input the prompt, and so when the models, when we process the prompt, we will get all the responses, where the output view shows the top response and other responses are in the left panel. And for top response, we extract the individual statements from top response, and each individual statement represents a single piece of information. And users can click on each individual sentence to see the corresponding statements. And so can I go back to that slide?
Sorry, I'm hearing audio at the same time than your voice.
Yeah, can you?
You ask me to go back?
I'm muted now. The video is okay.
Is it okay?
Yeah. Just talk. I muted the video, so good.
Great. And for each, so basically user can click sentence to locate the corresponding statements. And for each statement, so where the blue bar indicates the number of supporting samples, where the orange bar indicates the number of contradicting ones, and the neutral and the gray and neutral ones, which represent the samples that do not contain this information. And users can click the bars to navigate the corresponding response and their corresponding sentence that directly show this contradicting or supporting information. Yeah, and so we also noted, so for each statement, we can identify some keywords that represent this information and to validate the accuracies and annotate this information directly on the text. So we can see that the model is very confident about this person's nationality and year of death, but the model is not confident about this person's graduation college and other information. And users can investigate the details by hovering and clicking on certain information. So in this case, we see that the model is not 100% sure that this person is born in Leominster city, but you see that in all alternatives, they said that the person is born in Massachusetts state, so which can help our users to confirm that this person's birthplace at the state level. And similarly, users can see the corresponding responses and their sentences by clicking. And in some cases, so if there's some information that not directly identified by a system, users can actually select them. And the system will recommend a question that represents this information, and use this question to get the alternatives from other responses, and so to show the distribution to users. And finally, based on the analytics results, the users can edit the model generations by removing the inconfident statement and to get a more valid and trustful outputs. And this study is collaborated with Stanford University and IBM Research, and it is to be appealed in the this year's CAI conference. And from the IBM lab, so in our lab, we also have other related and exciting research. So if you are interested, you can and check our latest study. And that's for my presentation. Yeah, thanks.
Super. Thank you very much for this anti-hallucination approach, I would call it. And do you have a name for it?
I mean, for the system or for the problem. So this system we name it Relic is about as investigating the reliability via consistency. So we call it Relic.
Okay.
This is the name of our system.
That's nice. All right, so we are getting towards the end of our webinar. So we have still a few minutes for questions, and I would like to invite everyone who's in the call to raise your questions. Also, you still can use the chat, of course, as much as whatever you prefer.
The chat's been disabled, Sandra. At least I see that in the chat.
Your chat is disabled?
Yeah.
Okay, we had some questions. They were able. I don't understand this because for some it is possible, for others it's not.
Yeah, the moderators will enable the chat in a second. Plus, I believe now you'll also have the possibility to raise your hand to get unmuted to let us know your question on the voice line. Just working on this. Moderator will let us know in a second. Okay, so
okay, now we have a first question here. On the Q&A, is it possible to get a recording of the prompting presentation? That would be very helpful. Yes, I think so. The whole session is recorded and will be accessible.
well, in case you should come across a question at a later point in time that you felt you could have used the opportunity to ask it here, we will also leave you with our contact details, and you are more than welcome to reach out and let us know, and always happy to discuss over the phone or over a coffee in our office. So I would then otherwise use the opportunity here to thank all of the participants for joining us, for making use of that opportunity, and then obviously also to all of my fellow presenters for your time, for your effort, and for making all of this possible. So thanks, everybody. Hope you could enjoy this, and